where is Bijan Robinson going to go? Philadelphia 10 is a popular pick, not just amongst Philadelphia fans who want to see that, but people are putting him there. Peter Schrager had him at 10. There's a bunch of other people have had him at 10. I had an article essentially articulating where you should draft a guy like Bijan, given how special he is.
What was your case? What was your case? Okay, let's talk Bijan for a second here. I had a little Twitter discourse last night while I was firing up the 05 draft and doing some offensive tackle analysis. So somebody said, how can PFF say that Bijan Robinson can go in the first round? How can, out of one corner of your mouth, PFF say, never draft a running back in the first round? The data says that the analytics say that, yet someone within PFF is saying, go for it. And my response was, PFF is not just one voice. So go ahead. You be the voice. Why is it okay for Bijan Robinson to go in the first round?
So number one, I don't think the data does necessarily say that. My point essentially is, if you're you have a draft pick somewhere in the first round, Bijan Robinson is on the board. I have a 3-tiered checklist. If you can answer all these 3 questions and convince yourself that each one of them makes sense, then you can draft the guy. If you can, no. So the first one is the easiest one. Is my running game functional already, or do I need this running back to come in and make a running game? Essentially the Pittsburgh Steelers question. They drafted Najee Harris at 20 or 21 or wherever that was, and he was supposed to fix the run game. They averaged 3.8 or 3.6 yards per carry the year before they drafted Najee Harris. It was the worst run game in the NFL. And they're like, we need a first-round talent. We need this 230-pound bruising running back to come in, give this old-school presence in the backfield, and that'll fix the run game. And they went from 3.6 yards per carry to 3.8. Right? The running back is not going to fix it by himself. You need the blocking. You need the environment already there. If you have that, you can think about it. If you don't, it doesn't matter what the next 2 answers are. You're already out of the running. So that's checklist number 1. So the Eagles qualify, right? That run game's clearly already functional. They can put anybody back there and they're going to have success. So the Eagles can still move on to questions 2 or 3. Then we have the contract thing. Because of the way rookie contracts are slotted now, you know what you're paying these guys immediately. And that also stays the same regardless of the position you're drafting them, which means the contract has different values, surplus values, depending on the position you're picking. So if you draft a running back in pick number 5, right, you're already paying that guy like he's the best running back in the NFL, even if he's not. So that's problematic. Whereas if you draft a wide receiver at pick number 5, you're paying that guy like he's the 20th best wide receiver in the NFL. And an edge rusher like the 15th best edge rusher in the NFL. Like, depending on the position you draft, particularly when you get into the high picks in the first round, the contract is very different depending on the position. So immediately I think that caps how high you can take a running back in the first round. I'm not taking a running back at number 5 because even if he ends up being the best running back in the league, I'm immediately paying him like he is anyway. And then if he isn't, I'm paying him like that. I'm paying him as if he is. So I'm just burning that money at that case. So there should be a cap on how high you can draft a guy like Bijan Robinson. And I think that probably starts to make sense towards the back end of the top 10, where the money starts to drop off quite quickly. And then obviously the further down you get, the better a bargain it is, right? So if you find the same guy in the second round, it's a steal. In the 5th round, it's peanuts. So question number 2 is simply, am I picking high enough where it's prohibitively nonsensical from a financial standpoint? And if you're picking higher than 10, it probably is. You're probably out of that running immediately. Question 3 is, what's the opportunity cost? What am I leaving on the table? Do I need something else more? And I think in this draft, where we just talked about, it's low on blue chip players, it's low on guys that even have a first round draft grade. There's going to be a lot of teams where they get to a spot where they have to say, Bijan is the best running back. Let's say he's the best grade we've given out since 2014. So we're talking about he's been talked about a lot as being the best prospect since Adrian Peterson. That's 2007. That's like 15 years worth of this, right? So he might have the best running back grade we've given out in 15 years versus edge number 4. Versus wide receiver number 3 in a bad group of wide receivers versus, offensive tackle 4. Like, I think it gets quite quick where you can make the argument that those guys all play more valuable positions, but there's such a difference between Bijan's grade and their grade. It's worth taking the running back, and I can circle back for a different position.
Okay, well said. Good stuff. What does running back grade mean when we talk about not just PFF grade, but every NFL team is going to project this guy. This guy's a 9. This guy's elite. This guy's generational. What is it? The argument against running back is the difference between even Adrian Peterson or your best running backs at any given time. The difference between them and running back 10 or running back 15, that's the smallest margin of any position in the NFL because of the first thing that you said. Even Adrian Peterson behind a bad offensive line was going to struggle. But if you had at least a good enough offensive line, he was going to be good. So the driver for the run game is other things. I'll add one more bit though to your case. What if you were drafting Bijan and you said, I'm only doing it for 4 years, and that's it. I'm locked into this, because I make a lot of these moves thinking I'm going to be the GM forever here, man. I'm going to be the GM forever. Most GMs don't do that, right? They're just 2/3 of the league is just trying to get through the next 2 years, not get fired. If I know I'm going to be here forever, is there a long-term play? Can I justify the running back in the first round if, just like the Panthers did, you're eventually going to trade him? So I like to think of every move as a balance sheet, right? What are you getting, and what are you paying for what you get? But then what's your? It's just a cost assessment, right? What's your cost, and then what are you getting in return? The cost is the first round pick, and then the contract, as you said. What I'm going to get in return for Bijan is whatever, let's call it WAR as a number, right? Whatever WAR I'm going to return. But is there another thing to add to your return, which is I'm only going to use him for 4 years. I'm going to use him for 4 years. I'm going to trade him, and at the end of 4 years, he's going to have numbers and this and that. And he's going to be a 15 touchdown guy, and he's going to do all these things, hopefully. And I'm going to trade him for a second and a third. I'm going to trade. Like, the NFL is not going to value running backs highly at that time. But we saw Christian McCaffrey. Now, that's an extreme example. McCaffrey's top 3 running back in the NFL, maybe the best when he's healthy. But I'm going to trade him, and I'm going to get something in return. So the long-term play could be 4 years of elite running back play plus some other return on the end. And if you're a team like the Eagles that can make his stats look really, really good, you can make his stats look incredible. You're going to have a good offense. He's going to make it a little bit better. He's going to score a ton of touchdowns and all that stuff. Maybe that helps with the value at the end of the day.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I'm certainly only viewing any running back that I take as a one contract proposition, unless you end up with a bargain type second deal like the Austin Eckler contract, which you're not going to get if he's as good as you think he's going to be when you're drafting him. To me, the question becomes it's the certainty element, which is the difficulty in this, because you're not just evaluating how good you think a guy is, it's how much certainty is involved in that. So he belongs in the conversation that Quentin Nelson was in, which is, yes, this guy plays a position that is not valuable. However, we are so certain that this guy is not just going to be good, but is going to be elite, that it changes the rules of where you draft him. So the Indianapolis Colts end up selecting Quentin Nelson, number 6 overall, I think. And you hear all the time, you can't take a guard in the top 10. That's crazy. That's madness. Like, it's not worth it. He'll never be worth it. And Nelson ended up not just being a good guard, but was literally the most valuable offensive lineman. So not guard, all offensive linemen over his first 4 years in the league. So they changed the rules and they said, forget it. Normally you wouldn't draft a guard before, the middle of the first round. We're going to take this guy at 6, and he's so good that he's going to end up being worth more than that. So that's the argument with Bijan. He's so good in a draft that is very low uncertainty that you change the rules for him.
I think we overrate the guard thing. I mean, maybe again, I'm just using WAR as a proxy because I think it's good. Like, I think it's a good number that says if you have more WAR on your team, you're going to win more games. And I think it does do a good job of identifying player value. Quentin Nelson at his best is 1.5 to 2 times more valuable than the best running backs in the NFL by this WAR metric. You can't bank on it every year. There's injuries, all that stuff. But you can make a case that the other part about WAR, wins above replacement, the distribution for guards is massive, right? An average guard brings something to the table, right? We always talk about creep back to an average. But a bad guard is really bad. A bad running back is actually not going to crush your team because, again, there's other factors. So that's the argument against running backs as well, Sam. The distribution of value at that position, even if you feel, let's say, 80% confident that Bijan's going to hit the top end, 80% confident that Quentin Nelson's going to take the top end, that is going to hit the top end. I think top end Bijan is not making the same impact as other positions. So the other thing I think you need to compare it to is if you think he's that great, even if 80% confidence, what does that actually do for your team? Are we talking about which running back has had the most impact over the last 5 years on their respective teams? It has to be Derrick Henry, right? Mm-hmm. Nick Chubb, maybe. Christian McCaffrey, maybe.
I mean, Henry is another guy who was good enough that it changed the rules. Like that's the conversation.
But that's what you have to get. Like the return you have to get, I think, is a Derrick Henry-like return.
I'm only making this argument for Bijan. This is not an argument that applies to all running backs. This does not also apply to Jahmyr Gibbs.
It's literally just this one guy.
It does not also apply to Jahmyr Gibbs. It does not also apply to Zach Charbonnet. It applies to Bijan Robinson, who might be the best running back to enter the draft in 15 years. Like, that's the conversation we're having, is that he is special enough to the point where it changes the rules on what you know about all these things. Now, the two biggest points against it are, number one, the ease with which you can find good running backs lower down. And lower down is cheaper, opportunity cost, all those things are better. The lower down you get a guy, right? So if you're able to find a Nick Chubb, like if Zach Charbonnet comes in, ends up being Nick Chubb 2.0, you automatically goofed almost regardless of where you drafted Bijan, because you could have had the guy lower down who's giving you most of what you get. So Derrick Henry was so good, he changed rules, and yet Nick Chubb was almost as good, maybe as good. You know what I mean? It's not, and obviously Derrick Henry didn't go in the top 10 or anything like that, but that's the conversation you're having. So if you think you can target that guy lower, then yeah, you are passing up. But the issue being, Bijan is supposedly in this special realm of rule breaking. The other problem with that is that the NFL gets into trouble when it starts looking for exceptions. That's the thing that I find difficulty with, is Quentin Nelson is an exception. Bijan Robinson, I think, is an exception. The problem is it's very easy to talk yourself into exceptions. Like, yeah, I'm concerned by this, but this guy's different. This guy's the exception. And when you start chasing exceptions, you get everything wrong. So I think part of being good at this job, and by this job I mean like general manager, player selection, not our job, is knowing when to break the rules and when to actually stick to the formula and just play the percentages. Knowing when to break the rules is how you end up with special talents that you wouldn't have taken otherwise, because they don't tick a box somewhere, or the numbers, the data, the percentages says go in a different direction, let somebody else take the gamble. But getting it right, knowing when you break that rule and saying this guy's different, that's how you end up with potentially game-changing players.
Is he the best that we've seen? I mean,
yes.
People are asking about him versus Saquon Barkley.
He is significantly better than Saquon Barkley was as a prospect.
But Saquon's a better, more dynamic receiver. And we
Is
put
he?
a lot. I think so. Yeah.
Why?
I think Saquon's big playability was always the most attractive thing about him. If you just evaluated Saquon,
it wasn't necessarily as a receiver.
As a receiver and a runner. I think the evaluation for me with Barkley was he's actually not the most polished runner. He's gonna have a lot of negative plays, much like a Barry Sanders.
Stop it.
What? We embrace comparisons, man.
No.
I just said he had a lot of negative plays like Barry Sanders. Is that not true?
That was always a dramatically overblown part of Barry Sanders' game.
Okay, great. I didn't equate Saquon and Sanders,
No,
man.
it was the Sanders criticism I wasn't standing for.
Oh, okay. Barry Sanders is the best ever. What was I talking about? But Saquon, we weren't in this headspace. We were starting to get into the headspace of just don't even touch running backs in the first round. But I think even with Barkley, we were saying it's certainly not at 2. You can't do it at 2. But you do it in the teens or whatever, and he's got to be the icing on a cake for an offense. Has to be. But I don't think he's nearly as good of a runner as Bijan Robinson. But I think the Saquon Barkley thing was, if you can block it up, or if you can give him a little bit of space, he could be the best home run hitter in the NFL. Now, he hasn't really been. He has been at times. He's been up there. But Nick Chubb has really been probably the best home run hitter in the NFL. And again, this goes back to predicting this stuff. You're trying to say this guy's the outlier, but the outliers that we have found, the best guys that we have found were Nick Chubb in the second and Dalvin Cook in the second, who I thought was the best running back that draft anyway, and Derrick Henry in the third. Those are the best running backs we've.
Yeah, that's why
went at 8 overall.
That's why number 1 on that checklist exists. If you don't have the situation already, don't do it. You're already out of the conversation immediately. No. If you have an average system, if you have an average offensive line, if you have nothing, like if you're not already a good running game, forget it. You're not out. Number 1, X. You do not pass to number 2. You're immediately saying no. You're looking somewhere else. But the Browns.
So who's equipped?
The Browns already had that. The Eagles.
Besides the Eagles, is there anyone else besides the Eagles? Because again,
Dallas.
I am more willing. Let me know, by contradicting myself, I am more willing to put the elite running back into a situation that also has a high-end running quarterback. The Eagles with Jalen Hurts. If the Texans want to draft Anthony Richardson and Bijan and have Damian Pierce, and if you really want to pivot and build your run game first and then build your pass game off of that run game, someone that has a great running quarterback. The Bears. I don't want the Bears to pick him at 9, but is that the way to maximize Bijan Robinson's value, by putting him with a running quarterback? Even though the running quarterback makes it easier for everybody. So is that contradictory to say you put the elite quarterback with the running quarterback, the elite running back with the quarterback that makes it easier?
No, I mean, it's the situation. If the situation is already conducive for a running back to have success, then you can move on to questions 2 and 3. So if you need the running back to change the dynamic beyond simply adding insane value on top of what's already good, then that's a problem. Then you're literally not even in this discussion. So that's another thing, is that is he worth a first round pick thing it's not a blanket statement. It's only if these 3 checklist items are ticked, which they aren't for a lot of teams. They only are for a few of them. If you look at the NFL right now, the teams that is true for, it's what? Philadelphia, definitely. I think Dallas is probably another one. Chicago would probably be one, though it remains to be seen what their offense actually looks like once we put these new pieces together in place. Detroit is probably one. That might be it. I mean, Cleveland, yeah, but they already have their running back. There's a couple of teams like that. Cincinnati, I guess, would be in that discussion, maybe, though their offense wasn't exactly firing in terms of the ground game last year. So it's not a lot of teams we're talking about that applies to.
Isn't it easier to make the argument for a team like Cincinnati that even though they don't have a great run-blocking offensive line, though, Bijan Robinson may be adding a little bit more value than Joe Mixon as a runner? Just adding a few extra yards here and there and maximizing what they have.
Yeah, but we already
talk yourself into that.
No, because I think the problem was that is in the non-functioning category, where the problem is not that you can't improve it with a running back. It's that he's not going to take it where it needs to go. It improved by Samaje Perine carrying the ball. So don't spend a first-round pick on that. Go get a guy. Go get Zach Charbonnet. Go get whoever you want lower down.
Part of the argument against a first-round running back as well is, and this is where data lies, is you're more likely to feed that guy. You're more likely to want to get your value out of that player. Therefore, you're going to lean on the run game maybe more than you should when points come in the pass game, right? So if you could be disciplined and not say, well, we just drafted Bijan Robinson, we got to make him a 20 carry a game guy. If you could be disciplined and truly only use him as, the other piece of your offense, or he goes to an offense that's going to run the ball a ton, that has the quarterback that's a runner, and you're already going to run the ball a lot. You're the Ravens, you're the Eagles, you're already going to run the ball. You're the Bears, you're already running the ball a lot. And if you're going to do that, why not have somebody really good doing it? That to me is part of the argument as well. If you're the Bucks at 19 that don't check your boxes, don't have the offensive line in place, don't have the quarterback, you're not building your offense around Bijan Robinson. Like there's probably meetings in Tampa Bay being like, we were the worst team in the league running the ball last year. How can we fix it? Well, Bijan Robinson could be there at 19. Like that discussion's probably being had, and that should be the X. No, thank you. He's not saving this.
That's the Pittsburgh folly.
That was Pittsburgh
already
a couple
seen
years
that.
ago. Yes. All right.